This video is going to be probably a longer rant on why CTW, very control-heavy metas in CTW are really bad for the game mode and hurt the way teams are able, the different kinds of strategies teams are able to employ to win a game, and make the game kind of boring and linear and slow. Okay, obviously these are just opinions, and nothing I say is an absolute truth, and I'm going to try to be convincing, so take that with a grain of salt. Or just keep that in mind when you're watching. Okay, so the first thing is I want to talk about what teams can do when a team has control of a side or is contesting for control of a side, okay? So let's say you're the blue team and you have this and you have 4 people here, okay? As the red team, you really have 4 options. 1, you can put 4 people here as well and try to push into them. 2, you can put 4 people here as well and wait for them to push into you, okay? Just hold. 3, you can put 2 or 3 people here and try to stall the blue team as long as possible. Or 4, you can try to run around them and ignore whatever they're doing, okay? Those are the 4 things you can kind of do. Here's the thing though. While we think there's those are all valid strategies, when a team, the way the maps are currently with their respawns and the size of the islands and the way teams play splits and focus on bowing at the beginning of games, or just throughout the game in general, everything always becomes about all the strategies get reduced into the same 2 things, and you don't get all these types of strategies, okay? And we know this, if you've played a lot, you know that if the team has 4 here, the only thing you're going to do is send 2 here and stall them, or you're going to send 4 here and push it and stall them, or wait for, or go underneath them or whatever, and just wait, try to stop them for as long as possible and then take control of it. When you're 4 and you don't have control of something, or when you're 2 and you don't have control of something, you're never going to be able to push into it until you somehow get an advantage, because the way Void works and the way infrastructure works and the fact that this island is bigger and higher and whatever, right? That's just controlled mechanics and basics in general. So whenever a team, and the important thing to note is you only have these options, right? That's the problem with the current maps. If you try to run by, you're throwing. If you try to put 1 here and put 5 here, since these people are already here, you're probably throwing, and they're going to get in regardless. So then the game always becomes about the same 2 things. You have to match their split, or you have to stall their split. And most importantly, you have to work to not get caught out when you're doing these things, right? Every team is so focused now on microplay and managing to not make mistakes before they start a fight. They're never focused on playmaking themselves, and they're never focused on being able to do a lot of the things that we used to do in CW, rush wool rooms or tunnel, or try to take multiple coordinated team fights instead of just one. These are the kinds of things that we lose in CW because of the way maps are made and because of the ways that teams play now. Okay, so what else? I've finished this part. Okay, so there's a lot of problems with the way this works, right? The first thing is that it makes gameplay very slow and predictable and boring. Every single time you play GD3, you know what's going to happen. You know exactly what's going to happen, okay? And it's so fucking annoying, because then why are you playing the map over and over again? You are going to take a side, you're going to skybridge, and then you might ground push and spawn kill eventually 15-20 minutes in the game. Or if the team is throwing, 10 minutes in the game, you'll ground push and get in and run out, right? So most of the time, for good teams, it's a literal 35 to 45 minute skybridge battle where you're making a skybridge, okay, and you're waiting for people to come up underneath you so you can stop them. This kind of gameplay is, again, predictable, boring, and slow, and it's not fun to play, and it's not fun to watch, right? And the most notable thing is, it's not only GD3. This also happens on Wallop 2. This also happens on Next Gen. The problem is, the problem becomes exacerbated when every single map has the exact same kind of problems, and every single map promotes the exact same types of strategies and exact same types of flows of gameplay. People respond to this in this way. They go but the flow is slightly different, or you can still try to do other things, okay? the flow, like if the difference between maps then between like next gen and GD, this is on really like this is really generic. If the difference is you're playing the game on 0.75 speed compared to 1.5 speed, I don't think that's actually a significant change in difference in strategy that warrants having that map exist in the first place and warrants having the map pool have that map in the first place, because you don't have different types of strategies then. You're just changing how fast you implement them, which isn't a skill in and of itself and doesn't have any meaningful trade-offs that make the map competitive. But also, like, it makes the game all about the microplay, right? When you're taking a 4v2, it's all about how long you can kite and stall them, which is fine. It is a skill in and of itself, and that's fine. When you're taking a 4v4, it forces you to make sure you can take good team fights, which is also fine, because like team fights are an important skill. But there are also a lot of inherently random factors. Why am I being tagged? There's also a lot of inherently random factors that determine how team fights go, and that's kind of the problem with microplay in general. Okay, there's things like the KB you take before you, like, as you get knocked out, right? Like the ping and that's reliant on the your ping relative to the other person's ping. The damage and the knockback you take from arrows is inherently random and based on your ping, right? The fact that like you have like a blatant cheater on your team is kind of bullshit that doesn't take any KB. These are all kinds of things that are really inherently random and really change the can change the outcome of fight significantly enough to the point where, like, if you have any one of those advantages, or if you get lucky that one time, or if someone gets knocked out randomly, because CW maps are like 70% void anyways, like these kinds of things change the outcome of games, and it's really frustrating to play when it does. And the only way, notably, that you can stop these things from happening is by playing really, really safe and playing really, really slow and slowly choking out the enemy team, so they're forced to play in a way that you are. Like, they're forced to play, like, to the way you want to play, right? But that in and of itself is, again, slow, repetitive, boring, and is just something that happens all the time, okay? So, kind of identify a bunch of problems here. Also, like, that defensive play means that you just kind of wait for the other team to push, or wait and sit and bow and wait for the other team to push. It could be 10-15 minutes before that happens. Boring to play, boring to watch, whatever. Also, notably, this kind of gameplay already exists in like on Stratus and on OCN game modes in the form of Conquest and all the Conquest maps. And Conquest is meaningfully better than this, better than the way CW plays this anyways, because you get all the team fights and stuff, and you get all the positional advantages and the big team fights and all the things that players that like these kinds of things get. But you don't get the shitty things like having people tunnel underneath you on skybridges and try to crit you out, and like wait for you to extend over long enough so you can like knock them out or shoot them out. Like, these kinds of gameplay things are stupid and reliant on the enemy team making a positional error in order for you to get that kind of thing. Also, when you're on a skybridge, it's just not fun to sit there and wait for someone so you can break a block and crit them, right? And then go back down and wait for them to heal and then go again. These kinds of gameplays are not, it's not interesting to play, it's not interesting to watch, it's not fun to play, and it just makes the game so boring and repetitive and random and uninteresting. And these are all things that I will explain why they just get, like, it gets a little bit better, at least with more macro level maps, okay? I also want to say that, like, all the other things I said before, but also, like, I'm not saying that teamfight metas or maps where team fighting is important and, like, where there's a lot of, like, big clusterfucks is a bad thing. I just think that if every map has that kind of thing, it's a really bad thing. And if having that means that you can't have other types of gameplay or other types, and having that kind of gameplay style chokes out other types of gameplay styles, then it's bad, right? So on a map like let's compare next gen to GD3. Next gen is, I think, has to be the gold standard of a map that is more control oriented but still has some sort of factors that you can like use to take priority and take pressure away from teams that have control of a side. Because not only can you like take, do I have next gen here? No, that's interesting. Not only can you like take an island on the far left and bridge and or wait for the to get a pick to push off the ground, but if you lose control, you can just make a sky bridge on your main lane or make a sky bridge on the other lane and force the team to rotate or move players so you can still take a fight. On GD3, you literally cannot do that because the front line, like, you literally can't do that because the only thing you can do on GD3 is walk forward. That's it. You can only walk forward. You cannot walk around because the other team can bow you, and bows do a shit ton of damage. You can't walk under because teams are looking for that. You can't walk, like, you can't walk over because that's where the teams are skybridging. The gameplay is so linear and fucking boring and frustrating to play. Okay. That's that. So, TLDR for this section, control gameplay when it's the only type of gameplay you can have sucks, and like if we're gonna have like GD3 as a map sucks, and next gen is the gold standard of what we should have maps that focus on control B. I also think maps like Jurassic aren't that bad, but still have a lot of flaws that I could cover in a different video, or maybe I'll cover later. Okay, second part of the video. What are the better alternatives to this? I think that more macro-oriented, more chaotic playstyles are just better for CTW, okay? Because the game becomes more unpredictable in the types of strategies that you can employ to get into the low room, which is more, one, it's more rewarding for teams who understand maps better, two, it's more rewarding for people who watch, and also the people who play who employ those strategies, and three, it means you don't get the same types of shit over and over again, and you can actually enjoy playing a map multiple times without getting bored. These are all important things that like Conquest doesn't really have, but CTW has the ability to have, that I think we should probably capitalize on instead of trying to make CTW more like Conquest. Right? So you get more, like when you have more unpredictable strategies and like larger like maps like We Sell Mushrooms, you also get like the meta becomes more oriented around like how quickly you're able to rotate, which is like a communication is a skill, and players having the eyesight and like ability to rotate themselves is a skill, and like more about like predicting respawns and being able to fight, like take control of the enemy's respawn, so like get them low but don't kill them, which are kind of different kinds of things that you don't get in Conquest that are unique to CW that still make it fun to play. So you get more chaotic gameplay. That's true, and I like look at We Sell Mushrooms versus Next Gen. It's a lot more chaotic. I'm not saying We Sell Mushrooms is perfect, but you can do a lot more things, right? When a team has control of when a team has control of this island, you can go underneath. You can sit here and stop and fireball them. You can sit here and make a sky bridge. You can go around or diagonally. You can go around this way. You can go around this way. You can also wait for them to push. You can stand back here and wait for them to push. You can stand here and wait for them to push. There's like 7 or 8 different things that you can do that you definitely cannot do on GD3 and Next Gen and Gobi and Wallop 2 and maps like that. Also, when you do push, it's not like you can only walk forward. The other team has to move to meet you rather than respawning right in front of you, right? These are all kind of important things that make We Sell Mushrooms a lot more chaotic, but also just a lot, like, because that, a lot more interesting to play and stuff like that. Also, so relative to very control heavy maps, I think you get a lot more you get a lot more room for different strategies. Matches go faster, matches are less repetitive. Also, inherently then, you also get a lot less reliant on team fights. So currently, like if you lose a team fight on the top side of Gobi, if you lose a team fight on the mid island on GD3 midway through the game, you're going to lose that wool 99% of the time. And if you don't, it's because your respawns came in armorless and tried to stop them, right? But it's really because of the fact it's so punishing for you to lose a team fight. Teams who are behind will take the safest option, always opt to wait, to sit and bow, and to not make any plays, to not take any control, and to not take any priority or pressure away from the other team. So you're kind of end up being like sitting ducks because you know it's the highest win rate way out, but that relies on the enemy team making a mistake and fucking up with their priority that they have, which is inherently boring, repetitive. The way team fights go, somewhat random, and very slow, and it just doesn't make for fun gameplay. It makes for all the maps to have the same kind of gameplay over and over again. So you also get then, with more like macro level strategy, more chaotic gameplay, you kind of get more options to make plays and less chaotic, like less simple, straightforward shit that isn't interesting. Okay. Notably, though, you also get a lot of better things, not just less worse things with macro level maps. Team fights are still rewarding, but they aren't the only indicator of whether a team should win the map or not, because of the fact that these more chaotic maps tend to be larger and tend to have less linear front lines. So when you win a team fight, you might get control of something, but that won't, like, the trade-off of that control is that you won't be able to do something else, rather than the only thing you're able to do is take control of an island, which means you have to still make a decision whether you should take control of an island or not, rather than when or how you should take control of an island, which is another inherent, like, trade-off that teams have to make that determine whether a team is more skilled or has better shot callers or whatever than the other team. Also, when you have more chaotic gameplay, it means maps are more prone to solo pushes or pushes with 2 people rather than clean team fights with 6 kills and like you just go in. It means that defending actually becomes a lot more relevant, and becomes a lot more relevant earlier on in the game, right? Because currently the way defending works is you make the most cancer water defense possible that slows people down as long as you can, but definitely doesn't try to stop them, because you know that you're never going to 6v1 as a defender unless you're Z-Swagger. And because of that, your goal as a defender isn't to really defend, it's just to make sure the team doesn't like randomly troll and get into your wool room when you're not there. It's more about, like, defenders don't really have a purpose when defending is all about stalling rather than actually stopping, like, and being able to outplay offenders. And I think it adds a lot more purpose and a lot more, like, fun for defenders that they don't really have in the meta right now. And as someone who, like, used to defend, I think that's really important. Okay. How do we do this? How do we achieve this? One, I think we just add maps like fungi and we sell mushrooms into the map pool and have teams test them out and make adjusted changes as necessary. 2, I think we remove GD3 from the map pool because I think that map fucking sucks and is super boring. Or we make such significant edits that it's no longer GD3. Like, at this point, play GD1. Like, I don't know. If people are real, like, GD3 is such a bad map in terms of everything. Like, it is such a, like, you can keep it in the map pool, but don't have every other map be like it. Maps like Wallop 2, GD3, Gobi, or sorry, not Gobi, and Jurassic, those 3 maps all play very, very similarly and all require the same kinds of skills. It's really frustrating then to play those maps over and over again because you're just doing the same thing over and over again. Next Gen and Gobi have a little bit more nuance in playstyle, Next Gen more than Gobi, and I think that Gobi with small edits could be made to be a little bit better. And Next Gen, as it stands, is probably a very good map and probably the only map that I would have continues to stay in the map pool. That's all. TLDR, maps that all prioritize control are bad. We should focus on more macro level gameplay rather than a focus on micro gameplay. Control metas kind of suck, and it's not fun to play control metas. And it's not rewarding or more skillful than a more macro level chaotic gameplay. Thanks.